1999, I was a freshman taking a mass media communications class. I had a rather interesting professor, good communicator, a lot of good discussions. And one particular morning I remember him talking about the concept of gatekeepers. Basically, media serves as gatekeepers of information. They serve as the filter and they decide what information will be disseminated either for broadcast, internet, publication, whatever the format might be. Back then, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. There's so much information in the world. There's no way that any one newspaper or news agency can cover every single story of importance on every single country in any particular day. However, over the years, I've come to see that this is not only a responsibility that the media has, but it's rather quite an advantage. And if they were to, say, have any sort of agenda for what kind of information they want disseminated, it would be rather easy for them to focus on one particular topic and at the same time perhaps completely omit another. Today I'd like to explore the question, should we trust the mainstream media? Are they reliable? Are they accurate? Back in 1922, author Robert Pike wrote in his book, The Immigrant Press and Its Control, that, quote, out of all the events that happen and are recorded every day by correspondents, reporters, and the news agencies, the editor chooses certain items for publication which he regards as more important or more interesting than others. The remainder he condemns to oblivion in the wastebasket. There is an enormous amount of news killed every day, end quote. Now, basically, that sounds like a fairly respectable description of what editors, newspapers, news agencies do. However, let's take a look at this quote. This is a Rents.com article, and it comes from a man named John Swinton. John Swinton was apparently one of the head editors at the New York Times during the Civil War, and the story goes that he was an honored guest at a banquet given to him by several leaders of his craft, several other journalists. He stood up and had this to say. There is no such thing, at this date of the world's history, in America as an independent press. You know it, and I know it. There is not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions, and if you did, you know beforehand that it would never appear in print. I am paid weekly for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper I am connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things, and any of you who would be so foolish as to write honest opinions would be out on the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one issue of my paper, before 24 hours my occupation would be gone. The business of the journalists is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of Mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it and I know it, and what folly is this, toasting an independent press? We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings, and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. That, my friends, is one heck of an admission, and quite an eloquent one, I might add. But anyway, lest you think that that was just some nut job back in 1880, maybe had a little bit too much to drink at the banquet, let me suggest that perhaps in no other time in history has the mainstream media been more monopolized, more biased, and more inaccurate than at the present time. Here's an image, a rather telling image from frugaldad.com. The title of the article here from 2011, Media Consolidation, The Illusion of Choice. And we see here that media has never been more consolidated. 6 media giants now control a staggering 90% of what we read, watch, or listen to here in the United States. Take a look at this image. Back in 1983, 90% of American media was owned by 50 companies. Compare that to 2011, where just 6 companies have an oligarchy, basically, and control 90% of the information we receive on a daily basis. Here are those 6: GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, CBS. You can see their affiliates below. Now, let me point out one, because I think it adds some credibility to that last site, Frugal Dad. Business Insider here in 2012 ran this story, which again I think adds some great credibility to it. But also, just wanted to note here that the infographic we just saw had a few changes. GE does not own NBC or Comcast anymore. That sixth company would now be Comcast, and Time Warner doesn't own AOL. So Huffington Post is not affiliated with them. However, despite these minor changes, again, that is incredible that just 6 corporations control 90% of the media, the mainstream media. Now, do you think they have an agenda? Do you think that they possibly could be biased? Well, just to give you a hint, in 2010, the parent companies of 6 major media outlets all donated anywhere from 5 to 7 figures to political organizations during the 2010 election cycle alone. And again, that's not even a presidential year. But hey, there's no conflict of interest here, right? I mean, come on, bought and paid for politicians? They wouldn't have any kind of influence on the informational gruel that we feast on every day from the mainstream media now, would they? Of course not. Now I know, you're probably wondering, what's my political affiliation? Well, basically, here's my view. The two political party system in America is bankrupt. It's basically two wings of the same bird. Let me give you a case in point. Back on New Year's Eve of 2011, President Obama signed into law one of the most controversial bills you've probably never heard of. It was called the National Defense Authorization Act. It states that the NDAA authorizes the military to detain even U.S. citizens under the broad new anti-terrorism provisions provided in the bill, once again without trial. In other words, the NDAA actually gave Obama the legal authority to kill or detain Romney without trial if he wanted to. For instance, Obama could point to Romney, whisper "enemy combatant" to one of his thugs, and end the election before Tuesday. Obama would have to answer to nobody for this action, and he would have the illegal authority to carry it out. Basically, it was the suspension of habeas corpus, the right to a trial. Ironically, Mitt Romney very clearly stated that he would have signed the NDA as well, just as it was written. The GOP presumptive nominee, Mitt Romney, declared before national television that he supported the NDAA as it was written, and people still want to vote him into office. That, my friends, is why I did not vote for neither Romney nor Obama in the 2012 election, because it was just so obvious that the mainstream media was complicit. He decided to pass this crazy little bill on New Year's Eve when nobody would be listening, and the 6 major corporations complicitly followed his lead and said, yeah, we're not going to cover that. Ah, the illusion of choice and the credible news agencies that happily report on those political parties. Well, if you are, my friend, a hardliner when it comes to political affiliations, you have nothing to fear. I promise to be equally offensive to both parties as I see fit.